Hey everyone, my name is Jonathan Sullinger, and I am a software developer who typically writes applications using C Sharp and the .NET framework on the Windows platforms. And for a very long time now, I've been writing a MUD game engine. And it's taken on various different forms over the years. It originally started in Visual Basic, like 20 years ago, 19 years ago, somewhere in there. I was like 9 or I was probably 10 or 11 at that point when I started building my first little mud game. It was actually a mud game in Visual Basic. And then, over time I progressed and eventually ended up, I've written some C++, I've written Objective-C, I've written Swift, and C Sharp is what the language I predominantly use. So I've been using it for about 10 years or so. And over the last 9 to 12 months or so, I've picked up the project and started fresh, clean slate, building a MUD game engine. And some of you might be asking, what is a MUD in the first place? You might understand what a game engine is, but not quite what a MUD is. And the more people that I ask, uh, or the more people that I talk about this with, the fewer I find actually knows what a MUD is. So a MUD is a multi-user dungeon game. A multi-user dungeon game is a game. It's basically a text-based MMORPG. You can think of it that way. You connect to a server, usually through a telnet client. There's other means of doing it, and you type out commands such as walk north, walk east, look around, equip weapons, cast spells, attack this monster, cast healing on Alice, right? Um, Take quests, do events, player versus player. I mean, it is some MUDs are no different than an MMORPG, except for the fact that they're text based. And being text based, they can be much richer. And when most people play an MMORPG, they you're not sitting around and you're looking at the environments, right? I mean, you do at first, the eye candy is cool for the first 20, 30 minutes of the gameplay, but by the time you've sunk 5 to 10 hours into it, you're not paying a whole lot of attention to the eye candy and the environment around you. You're going through and you're doing the quests and you're playing with your friends and you're talking with your guild members or doing raids, etc. Right? Whereas a MUD kind of forces you into that. You have to read the dialogue and understand what's going on. And it's very much like a cross between an MMORPG and a novel. You read, and as a result of that, there's a much bigger you have a better connection with the environment and the world that you interact with. And so a lot of people that want to truly experience like a real role-playing fashion, like the old Dungeons and Dragons role-playing kind of setup, um, they would do that with they enjoy playing the MUD games rather than playing the traditional 3D MMORPGs. So what I set out to do a long time ago, started out just building a MUD game because I was, a kid and we didn't have access to the internet, and it was basically, I learned how to program without internet and MSDN or Stack Overflow or Google, right? So mm, it was a little bit more challenging, and because couldn't buy the books and stuff like that, and um, I wanted to build a game, but I couldn't pick up and learn DirectX and write C++ and stuff like that. But my dad knew Visual Basic, and so he was able to help teach me Visual Basic, and I could build a text-based game, and at least have a game built. And when I got my first text-based game built, I was like, I could build an editor to make this easier. And then I started building an editor around it and called it a text-based game engine. And then years later, and the internet explodes. We have Google, we have all this stuff, and I discover MUDs, and lo and behold, the genre of games that I built when I was a kid actually exist and is a real world thing. Not as popular as the more mainstream games are nowadays, but they still exist and they're still out there, and it's a fun little side project to work on. So what I'm going to be doing is building a MUD game engine. And the game engine will be a set of APIs that developers can bring into a new .NET project, reference them, and build a game using the engine APIs, the engine framework. They can use the existing stuff that ships out of the box, or completely replace major components of it, add additional components to it, and it's make it very flexible. Then for non-programmers, build on top of the engine a full editing suite. And on top of that, the entire stack, the engine, the editor, the servers, all needs to be cross-platform, because I want to run the actual servers on Windows, Linux, OS X. I want that the editors available on all devices, so that the intent being you can run a server on any desktop class operating system, but edit your game from any desktop class operating system or mobile operating system. So the framework as a minimum needs to be completely cross-platform. The editing environment, there's a little bit more wiggle room there. So I'm not 100% sure what direction I'm going to go with that. So we'll have to play that by ear and see as we go along. So I've already got the initial foundations of the core game engine wrote. And we can take a look at that over on GitHub. So, see if we pop this open and go to So the project exists on GitHub under the MUD Designer team. And the MUD Designer team currently exists of one person, myself. Rather than putting it under my personal GitHub repository profile, I built it as a team project. And what this allows me to do is group all of the different MUD engine related projects or components under a single a single location on GitHub. Make it a little bit cleaner, because what I didn't want to have happen was, if you go to my profile, let me look at my profile on GitHub, I have a series of other projects that I'm already doing. We can ignore this one because it started out on my profile, but then as it started branching out and getting a little bit larger, it started getting convoluted with these other side projects that I've got on GitHub, and I didn't want that. So I built a team a project on GitHub. And so we have the actual MUD engine. The team project is called MUD Designer, and that's the overall like general project name is the MUD Designer. The MUD Designer is a game engine, a game editor, and together you use it to build and design and create and publish MUD games. So we have the MUD Designer team project, which has a MUD engine repository. The MUD engine repository consists of the core engine itself that you as a developer or myself as the editor author has to reference. This is the foundation. Then everything else can just come secondary. An example of that is I have a server adapter, and the server can be used with the engine to start up a game engine, spin up the server, start listening to clients connecting to the server, interacting with the clients, all done through the server. The engine itself does not know the server exists, but the server knows the engine exists. And by having that clean separation there, it works really nice, because now you could build your own servers if you want to. It's faster, or it's not going through, it's not that telnet kind of thing, but it could be a web. You could build a web API, and your client just your client or your server can ping the web API, and the web API can be distributed. You could do whatever you want. It makes it very flexible. Same goes with the editor. The editor repository exists. However, the editor repository currently is empty because I haven't started on that yet. So the only thing that does actually have content at this point in time would be the Mud engine and the Mud designer. Having said that, though, as I started building it and I was working on it, I kind of got the idea, watching some other people on Twitch and YouTube do streaming videos or streaming sessions of them building something from scratch to completion. And I wanted to kind of do that. I thought that would be kind of a cool idea. But I'd already started on the Mud engine and got a decent chunk of it put together. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a new Visual Studio project, or a new C# project in Visual Studio 2015 on Windows. And we're going to build the engine from scratch. I will be using the existing source code to go off of and be building it based off of that. And so what that's going to allow me to do is basically reproduce what I've already written, but allow people to watch and interact and see why things were done the way they were, and have a better understanding of the overall architecture of the engine. So that's the goal. That's the plan. It might take us a little while to get back up to where, source code parity with what the engine is on GitHub, but that's okay. And the nice part is that once we get to source code parity with what's on GitHub, then at that point we will just bring down the actual source code from GitHub into Visual Studio, and we will just be working against that all the time. So, some prerequisites. I want to walk through the development of the engine and the editor and everything with you guys. In order to do that, I'm going to assume that you've at least programmed in some kind of a programming language at some point. You don't have to know C#. That's easy enough to pick up. You'll need Visual Studio 2015 installed if you want to code along. You will need to have, we will be building it against .NET Framework 4.5 right now. 4.6 is available, but there's some issues with it right now, and I have not taken the time to upgrade my machine to include the bug fixes for 4.6. So we're going to be using 4.5 for now. At some point we will move to 4.6, and there will be a performance gain for us there out of the box, because the way that 4.6 is now all using the brand new just-in-time compilers and stuff. Ryujit is the actual name of that new just-in-time compiler, and we'll want to use that. But for now, 4.5 works fine. We're just getting on the development, we're getting going, don't need to worry about that. So you'll need Visual Studio 2015, .NET Framework 4.5, which should come with Visual Studio 2015, and I'll be building it on a Windows 10 machine. However, you can build it on Windows Vista 7, 8, 8.1, 10, doesn't matter. The actual engine components of it, you can actually build using MonoDev or Xamarin Studio, the free version, on a Mac or on Linux. It should not be a problem, because we will be creating portable class libraries in Visual Studio that literally are portable and move from operating system to operating system, as long as they have either the .NET Framework installed or the Mono framework. And Mono would be used on OS 10 or Linux to actually compile the source code. So, this is really cool, because you can literally code along with me on whichever platform you have or you're most comfortable and familiar with. When we get to things that are more platform specific, which won't be in the engine, but it will be with the editor and with the servers, although the servers very, very little. You might have to watch through as we do the Windows stuff while you're on OS 10, and then when we finish up the Windows stuff, circle back around to build out the OS 10 stuff. On the server side, like I said, it's already more or less wrote, and there's literally 10 lines of code difference out of several hundred lines of code between the two operating systems, so it's literally like 5 minutes worth of work to build out the actual Windows implementation details, and then switch over and build out the implementation details for OS X. So it's not that much work. When we get to the editor, it's a little bit more of a different story, because I have not quite decided yet what route I want to go with the editor. Whether I want to be web-based and use a Microsoft's new ASP.NET 5 MVC6 frameworks that are cross-platform and can be deployed onto users' machines using a self-deployed server and the runtimes and all this stuff without. So I thought about that. Also looking at some cross-platform frameworks. But if I use some of the cross-platform frameworks, then it's very much desktop only, and I have to rebuild the same thing for all the mobile devices. Or if I use the the new Windows 10 Universal App stuff, then I can build at least for Windows 10 desktop, tablet, and mobile phone all the same binaries. But that leaves out the rest of the other platforms, and I'm not sure. I could build using cross-platform desktop application frameworks. And then when it comes to mobile, build out using mobile-specific cross-platform mobile frameworks, which are expensive. Like Xamarin Studio is $1,000 per platform. So if I wanted to build on Windows, iOS, and Android, it would be $3,000. So I'm not sure the direction I'm going to go with the UI stuff, and that's why we're going to focus on the engine and the servers and getting everything put together and ready, so the the editor can come along and sit on top of a more or less finished version of the engine. And at that point, hopefully, I have some kind of an idea. And we might just do trial and error. We might start building out the editor in one framework and decide this is just not going to work for us. Go find something else. It's the benefit of it being open source and a side project is try a few different things out and see what works best, and then go down that route. Do some prototyping. So, with that, why don't we go ahead and cover how we're going to do some design work. So I use OneNote to do the design, and OneNote works really good by allowing us to capture a bunch of just brain dump. What do we want to do? How do we want things to look? How do we want things to be architected? How do we want a layout to be? How do we want things to interact with each other? Just get it all out there and dump it out there, and then come back after the fact and relate things, organize things, refactor the documentation, what have you. So there are other solutions out there like Evernote. There's mind maps you can use, and we can actually build out mind maps and dump them into here. We can use Visio and dump them into here. The reason why I typically like to use OneNote over things like Evernote is it just accepts. It does a better job for this kind of stuff. If I have a mind map and I want to put it in Evernote, Evernote requires you to attach it as an attachment, and then you just you have to reopen that attachment every time you want to look at it. Whereas in OneNote, I can attach it as an attachment, and it will take it and print it out to a JPEG and insert the JPEG. So anytime I open a note, I just see immediately a JPEG of the document itself. So if you want to code along with me, what you'll need, like I said, is Visual Studio, and you can get Visual Studio by going to visualstudio.com. There's 3 versions here, and there's the Visual Studio Community Edition 2015. Visual Studio Online, this is a set of online tools that we're not really going to be using. And then there's Visual Studio Code, which at some point we might be using, but not right now. So what you will want to download is the Visual Studio Community 2015 version. If you click on it, it's just going to pop up and it's going to ask you to install it. Go ahead and save it. Install it. Take the defaults. You'll be fine with the defaults. OneNote, if you don't have Office, you can use Evernote. It's free. Office 2000 and Office 365 is what I use. I think you can get a subscription for like $5 a month or something like that with unlimited storage in OneDrive and access to all the Office tools like Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote comes with it. I don't know if OneNote is actually free, so we can take a look real quick. It is all your notes on your device, free download. Keep it. So, let's go to Windows. Use OneNote as long as you want. Okay, so cool. So OneNote is free, so I would strongly recommend you download OneNote. Get that installed. Get yourself all set up with that. And then the next time that we get together for the next video, we will actually create a OneNote notebook for the Mud Designer. Do some very initial, very high level structure and architectural layout of the overall project. And then open up Visual Studio, get our solution created, and get some projects created, and just get it all set up and ready to go. And we might even might actually get some code written. So with that, I'm hoping to get these videos out on a regular basis, some kind of a regularly scheduled. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do it on a regular schedule or not, but I do plan on getting them out quite often. And there might be times when I do some live streams as well. I've actually got the whole setup ready for live streaming. So, I might do some live streams as well as I see more and more people that watch the videos and comment it or whatever, give feedback and interact with me. Go ahead and start doing live streams on YouTube, and then take the live streams and when they're finished and get those published on YouTube on my channel. So with that, subscribe to my channel, like the video if you're excited and you're anxious and you want to actually to follow along with this. And if you have questions or comments, feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out to me on Twitter. I am Scion West on Twitter, so feel free to reach out to me and ping me there. So with that, I appreciate you guys taking a little bit of time to watch this introductory video and letting me explain to you kind of what the goals are long term and what we're going to be doing. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.